Hello guys, and welcome to my Speedy Mist Stamina Warden build. This is a continuation of the ads build that I have recently done on my YouTube channel about 1 month ago. So if you guys have not checked that build out, I implore you to check it out if you want to maybe try this spec on live. But this is the update for the upcoming Summerset patch. I have rebuilt it, of course, updated this bad boy, and given it Speedy Mist form. Now, this is, of course, footage from the live server, so you don't see the Speedy Mist form here, but we do have examples of the Speedy Mist in the video, as well as an older clip back when Speedy Mist used to be a thing in the game, just highlighting how effective Speedy Mist can be in group and open world PvP. So, without further ado, guys, we're going to jump into that build. I hope that you enjoy this opening video, and I hope you enjoy seeing some of the bursts. This is a really bursty build. As always, guys, if you enjoy what you see here, feel free to hit that like and subscribe button. And we stream live on Twitch pretty much every day, so if you guys want to see those live streams, come check out the Twitch channel. So without further ado, let's check out this build. Taking a look at the stats here, our max magicka is pretty decent, coming in at just under 13k. So we need a pretty decent magicka pool for our mist form for sure, and we do have quite a few magicka abilities, and we'll see that in the regen as well. Our max health's coming in at 20k. We do get the 10% health bonus, so this goes up to almost 22k when we're healing ourselves in combat, and of course Rally will keep that buff up on you. And then our max stam is coming in at 30k on our greatsword bar, and then just a little bit less on the bow bar. The max stam is a little bit lower than the last spec, and a big part of that is because we had to change up the build a bit to get the swifty traits in there. But anyway, it is still going to hit really hard, so don't worry. And the kind of advantage over the last build that I had done of this, is that you don't lose a ton of stam on your spec where you did on the previous iteration. And that's just because we're no longer running Hulking Draugr on swap anymore. Taking a look at our regens, 1400 magicka, super awesome. 2450 stamina recovery. Yeah, this is the most regen I've ever run in a build. And this is pretty subjective. There's 2 gear paths that you can build this build. One gear path will result in about 35k stamina and 2.2k recovery unbuffed, and then the path that I did here, which results in the higher recovery and the lower max stamina. Ultimately, the higher recovery path gives you more maximum stats, so you get more stats on your build going that route. But if you want to go the higher damage spec, you totally can by cutting your stam regen and just building this a little differently, and I'll talk about that in the gear, of course. Our weapon damage is coming in at just under 3k fully unbuffed. When we buff up roll dodge and everything, we see it coming in at 4,040. We are running an infused back bar as well, so we fully buff up to 4,650 weapon damage on this build, which gives us quite a pretty decent amount of damage on this spec. Sensei's Bite, of course, is a great set to buff up your weapon damage, and we have huge amounts of regen to really utilize the Sensei's Bite on this build as well. Our weapon crit's pretty decent, coming in at 33%. We do buff up with the potion to 43, but this is not a super heavy crit build, so you don't have to worry too much. Our resistances are pretty standard for a medium armor build. We've got 17.5k spell resist and 17.5k physical resist with 2k crit resist. So that's kind of where you want to be in medium armor for PvP, I think. Just standard medium resists to keep you from dying. We are a vampire on this build, and it is very important. It helps with the regen, it helps with the undeath, and of course we're using the vampirism mist form on this build as well. So you do need to be a vampire for it. For the drinks that we're running, I'm running the max stamina and magicka recovery drink. I would highly recommend using this drink for the spec because it's going to give you both recoveries that you really need. The magicka recovery is fantastic for this build because mist is important, and we rock a lot of stam recovery, so you could actually like forego stam recovery in favor of another stat. That being said, there is no drink that you can really use outside of Dubious Cameron Throne that this build can utilize besides the Cloud Rest really well. So I think the Cloud Rest is the best bet. I wouldn't go for the Dubious because it gives you max health, and you really don't want that. You want to focus on damage and regen on this spec. I wouldn't recommend going Dubious. If you want to go higher damage, still run this drink, but like I said, we'll just switch the gear out for something different that'll be a little bit more damage friendly. For the potion that we use on this spec, we of course are using Essence of Weapon Crit. This is going to give us stamina back, it's going to give us health back, and of course it's going to give us that weapon crit buff. So this is just the standard pot. The only important buff here, of course, is the weapon crit. You don't really need any of the other buffs that it gives. It's just a nice pot to have. Alright guys, let's take a look at the gear that we're running on this build. So to start off, we have the Bloodspawn Helm and Shoulder, same as the old gear that we were running. This is just great for the stamina recovery that it's going to give. Awesome. It also gives you that ultimate generation when you take damage, 6% chance to gain 14 ult, and then gain the physical and spell resist. So this is not only going to be great for your ult charges, but also bulking you up as well. And Bloodspawn pairs really well with Mistform. We are playing a speedy Mistform build. You're going to be using a lot of Mist on this build, and Bloodspawn will proc a lot while you're in Mistform. So it's a really great set to pair with the Mist as well. The next set that we have is 5 Bone Pirate. Now, we've gone back to Bone Pirate, one of the most popular sets in the game. And the reason is because this actually gives us the most amount of stat out of any kind of spec I could put together on this build, and that's why we've gone with Bone Pirate. So Bone Pirate, of course, is going to be in all our wearable gear here, and Bone Pirate was picked for that max stam and the regen that it gives. Super, super great for PvP builds to have the max stat and the regen, just help you stay alive and deal damage. The next set that we have is Senchei's Bite, and we are running 5 Senchei's Bite only on our bow swap. Senchei's Bite was put on the bow swap because we get that roll dodge, we get the weapon damage increase as well as the weapon crit. 430 weapon damage is a huge, huge amount of weapon damage. So yeah, this is a really good off-bar set to run. As long as we roll on our bow bar, we'll be able to take this bonus and swap it over to our greatsword bar. And then on the front bar, we are running a greatsword of agility, and that is what we're going to buff all that damage onto. The greatsword was chosen for that 2-piece max stam that it gets, being a little bit better than any other 2-piece max stam in the game, just to bulk up that outgoing burst damage. You could, of course, use a Maelstrom weapon here if you wanted to for crit rush, but ideally I think the agility greatsword's better because this is a burst focused build, so a bleed's not going to benefit it that much. For the weapons, I've gone infused on the bow. Infused is important, so you have that weapon spell damage enchant attached to it. It's just going to buff up the amount of the bonus that it gives you. On top of it, it'll reduce the cooldown, so you can keep your weapon spell damage enchant up almost at 100% of the time, as long as you're actively switching to your bow in combat. And then, of course, on the greatsword, we've gone with Nirnhoned. Nirnhoned, all around the best bet for increased damage and healing in PvP. The enchant on here is totally up to you. I wouldn't recommend the magic damage restore that I have here, because that is not a good enchant. I would recommend going with disease or a poison enchant, because it'll give them a bit of a healing debuff, or even going for a poison here if you really want to. I think the enchant is more worthwhile, because it'll be more bursty than the poison will, though. For the jewelry, we have gone with the Swift trait on all our jewelry. This is how we're going to get that Speedy Mist, 30% increased movement speed while we have the Swift trait on here. So this is going to increase all of our movement speeds except our sprinting and our mounted movement speeds. So something to note about this build is that if we look at my buffed movement speed here while running, it's actually not that much slower than my sprinting movement speed. You actually can't even really tell I'm sprinting, and I am periodically sprinting. There you see the regen ticks, and then back to the sprint there. So it's just a little bit faster than the run is. So due to the Swifty trait, I actually don't have to sprint on this build. You can use sprint to move a little bit faster, but you're almost at sprint speed without using your Swifty trait. And then, of course, that plays into the Mist form, and we get that Speedy Mist. And this is going to be so integral to survival in PvP. Speedy Mist, of course, is going to just... oh my gosh, I can't even say enough good things about it. I'm going to provide some footage of old school Mist form back when we had Speedy Mist in the game, and you guys will get to see Speedy Mist against some players, and I'll also provide some footage of Mist form on the live server right now, so you'll see the direct comparison between how much of a difference that Speedy Mist makes to the build or not. But anyway, so the Swifty trait is what we are running for the jewelry, and it is very, very important. The next thing that we have on here is weapon damage enchants. We've gone with weapon damage enchant, of course, because we just want to up that outgoing damage. We have a ton of regen on this spec. You really shouldn't focus on any regen and focus purely on putting damage on this build outside of the sets that you're wearing. For the gear, we have... impenetrable on our big pieces and well fitted. So we've got a good mix of the two. 3 impenetrable here and 4 well fitted. Impen's going to be great for PvP to reduce our incoming critical damage that we take. Crits, of course, are going to deal a lot of damage in PvP, so this is just all around a great way to reduce incoming player damage. And then well-fitted is awesome because we're going to be using a lot of roll dodge. We are running Senche. We have a lot of regen. The sprint on well-fitted is actually not as important anymore because we have such a fast movement speed outside of sprint, but the roll dodge is really why we're keeping the well-fitted on. Roll dodge is going to be very important. And then the glyphs on this gear, of course, is the Tri-Stat Hacky Joes. You don't have to use Tri-Stat glyphs, but I recommend you at least Tri-Stat the big ones for the HP bonus and the Max Magicka bonus it gives you. It helps out a lot to have more HP and the bigger Magicka pool so you can cast your Mistform more often back to back. So I had mentioned an alternative gear getup for this build. So the only difference between the two specs is that you're just going to replace Bone Pirate with Hulking Draugr. And that's it. You just replace the regen set with a damage set. Super easy fix if you want to go for the higher damage, less sustain route. But this is ultimately, like I said, more stats this way, so it's totally up to you guys. Alright, so let's take a look at the skills we're running on this build. We're going to start with our Greatsword bar to begin with. The first one that we have is Reverse Slice. This is going to be your execute for the build. I went with Reverse Slice because it's an AoE. You can go with Executioner. For single target, it will deal a little more damage, but Reverse Slice I think is better for this spec because we have a lot of AoE burst on it. So Reverse Slice is just going to be better to single in and finish off those bigger AoE kills that Executioner won't allow us to get. Critical Rush is our gap closer, and it still deals pretty decent damage. You know, they nerfed the crap out of it over and over, so it's not as good as it used to be, but it's still a pretty decent damage dealer. This is going to be our primary gap closer for the build. You can always go with Stampede if you want the snare. I still think the bonus damage on Crit Rush is worthwhile, though. Bird of Prey is the next ability. This is here to give us that minor Berserk buff. The stamina recovery buff it gives is a little negligible because, well, we don't really need it because we get it from the potion. That being said, if you're not using potions, you can get it from here, which is nice. The minor Berserk is the important one, though. Increase our damage by 8%. That's going to be awesome for our outgoing burst. The next ability we have is Rally. This is going to be our heal over time, our access to Major Brutality, as well as our burst heal on the build. So this is going to be just kind of your heal over time burst heal. It's not going to be your primary burst heal. You more want to keep Rally up at all times and use it as needed, because the next ability we have is Soothing Spores, and this is going to be your primary burst heal once your health begins to drop. Not only is this a great heal with a pretty good cost on it, it heals you and your allies. You get a 15% bonus to it because you're healing yourself, which you are 15 meters. You are within 8 meters of, sorry. So you get that 15% bonus. And then on top of it, you get a bonus to the healing as the health begins to drop by getting access to Major Mending. So the way you use Soothing Spores on this build is when your health drops below a certain point, you'll go for a Soothing Spore into Rally, and the Soothing Spore will proc your Major Mending, allowing the burst heal off your Rally to be really, really powerful. Between the two of these heals, Rally has the higher tooltip, so that is the one that you want with the Major Mending burst on it. And then finally, for the ultimate, we have gone with Dawnbreaker of Smiting, and we had chosen Smiting because this is going to be the best ultimate for the build. The big AoE stun that it gives, mixed in with Deep Fissure, the Greatsword Heavy Attack Splash, and Reverse Slice, we have got one heck of a great AoE burst on this spec. Yeah, it pairs really well, and it pairs really well with the speed of this build. You can deliver a quick, powerful, devastating AoE combo with this ultimate and your Deep Fissure using your Mistform, and it's unique. It's a great way to play the Warden. I can't wait to play it on the live server to actually be able to fight groups of players with this spec. Taking a look at the bow bar, the first ability we have is Poison Injection. Poison Injection is going to be our dot on this build, single target damage over time, and this is mostly here to help us kill any player that we have trouble fighting that is just like too tanky for us to properly burst down. The Poison Injection is going to put that dot on them that's going to give us the opportunity to actually capitalize on the kill once they're once we put the burst in them. The next ability that we have is Magnum Shot. This is going to be your primary stun on the build. It's nice because not only does it have a pretty beefy tooltip on it, it knocks your opponent back, it'll knock you back too, which is going to help synergize that crit rush damage. So if we look at this ability as a gap maker, we make 12 meters of distance between us and the target. So unless you're at max distance on your Magnum Shot, more often than not, your 20 meters of distance on Subterranean Assault will still land after you Magnum Shot your opponent as well. So Magnum Shot plays well with the Subterranean and the Crit Rush combo on this build, I think, and I really like it. It's a good stun, it's trolly, it's movement based, and you can knock people out of keeps too. The next ability we have is Elusive Mist. You know why this is here, because we built the build around it. This is a Speedy Mist build. Elusive Mist is going to be very important for that. It'll reduce the incoming damage we take by 75% and give us major expedition for that 30% movement speed bonus that will stack with our Swifty. Mist is a fairly expensive skill, coming in at just about 4.5k for a cast, so that's why we want to go for the bigger Magicka pool and have a good Magicka regen. Mist also cuts off your Magicka recovery as well as your healing while you're in Mist form. It's not a big deal with the healing or Magicka recovery because we do have great sustain on this build, and we are going to be using a lot of outside of Mist stamina abilities to allow our Magicka pool to recover when we're not in Mist form too. But the Mist form just pairs really well with the burst healing nature of Stamina Warden. Soothing Spores and Rally are such fantastic heals to pair with Mist form. You're going to get a lot of healing power out of it and really utilize it well, because Mist form, your health will drop to a low point and then you'll just go into your burst heals right back up and then back into Mist form, just like a Trolly Magicka Templar. So the next ability we have is Subterranean Assault. This is going to be our primary kind of combo damage dealer. The tooltip on the bow bar, of course, looks pretty low, but we take a look at the tooltip on our greatsword bar, and you see Subterranean Assault goes up to a much beefier tooltip. We go up to 15.2k on it, so quite good, quite good. You'll notice the tooltip on this build is a little bit lower than it was on the previous iteration, and that is, of course, because I'm playing a more regen-friendly spec this time. Subterranean Assault is also awesome because it's going to afflict your opponent with Major Fracture, reducing their physical and spell resist. This is just going to couple into your burst, allowing you to hit your opponents harder and harder because of that huge debuff. So not only is it a massive, massive AoE attack, it's going to give that debuff as well, allowing you to hit with your Dawnbreaker even more damage and more damage. The next ability we have is Ice Fortress. This is going to give us that physical spell resist buff for that 5,280 physical spell resist. And on top of it, it's going to give us minor protection. And this is on a 24-second duration. So this is a really nice armor buff. It has a nice beefy duration. You don't have to stay in a circle or anything. It sticks to you. And you actually give this armor buff to allies around you as well. So really great ability. It's fairly expensive, but we don't have to use it that often, and we have good recovery, so it's a fantastic ability for this build. And then finally, for the ultimate on the bow bar, I've gone with Healing Thicket. And I went with Healing Thicket because it is a great healing ultimate. It's very cheap. It'll heal you and your allies a lot. On top of it, it continues to heal you after you exit the forest for 1 second every 6 seconds. And that's a big reason why I went with the Thicket morph, because usually, especially this build being movement based, you will be moving around outside of your Healing Thicket after you cast it. So what this is going to do is allow you to actually utilize the healing from this ultimate without having to sit in it the whole time. You could go with the other morph that just makes it cheaper. Totally up to you guys. Or sorry, not cheaper, but returns ultimate. Totally up to the user, I think. Alright, so let's take a look at our champion points. We're going to start off in that green tree. We got 20 Warlord, 9 in Sprinter. So this is good because we've got to break free and we've got a sprint. There you go. Got to put points there. In the Lover Tree, we've got 64 Arcanist, 64 Mooncalf. Lots of focus on regen on both sides here. We need lots of regen from both pools. If you're going to cut one pool, cut Arcanist and keep the Stamina one, because you are getting more for the Stamina recovery because we have the higher base value. And then finally, just a few points in Tenacity for that increased heavy attack restore. And then in the Shadow Tree, we've got 66 Tumbling, 20 Shadow Ward. Big focus on Tumbling here because we got a lot of roll dodging going on. Sensei's Bite, medium armor, very important. And a bit in Shadow Ward because blocking is also very important for PvP, and you don't want to neglect it. In the Apprentice Tree, we have gone 32 in Blessed, and that is to increase our healing power. In the Atronach, we got 56 Master at Arms and 27 Physical Weapon Expert. This is going to increase our direct damage attacks, which is going to be pretty much everything except the AoE burst combos that we have. So our light and heavy attacks, crit rush, our poison injection, etc. And then Physical Weapon Expert's just going to buff those light and heavy attacks. And then in the ritual tree, we've got 64 mighty, 45 piercing, and 26 precise strikes. Big focus on mighty, little bit more on piercing, and then precise strikes coming in third place. And this is the spread that you want to see because, of course, the flat damage is most important for PvP, penetration, and crit coming more secondary to that. And the important passive that we get here is Last Stand. Last Stand is actually a really good passive for Stamina Warden because they can really take advantage of that minor heroism. And on a Mistform build, you will fall below 20% health often, and you will easily be able to go from 20% to full health, so you will get your major heroism buff fairly often on this build, and it will be very useful for you. So there you go. Last Stand, the important passive on this spec. Taking a look at the red tree, we have got 56 Ironclad, 54 Resistant, 11 Spell Shield, and 11 Physical Medium Armor. So this is to buff up our Spell Resistance and Physical Resistance. Ironclad will reduce the amount of damage we take from direct attacks, which is a majority of burst skills in PvP. And then Resistant will reduce the incoming crit damage we take, which is just great for PvP. In the Lady Tree, we've got 23 Hardy, 29 Elemental, and 23 Thick-Skinned. Hardy Elemental is going to reduce the amount of damage that we take from physical and spell damage attacks, and then Thick-Skin will reduce the amount of damage we take from damage over time. We don't have a Purge, so Thick-Skin, of course, is important for this build. And then finally, in the Lord Tree, we have gone with 49 in Quick Recovery, just to really bulk up that healing. This build has some pretty crazy healing power, and Quick Recovery is just going to make it better and better. So there you have it, guys. That is the champion points. Alright guys, so of course we have some PvP commentary for you guys. Unfortunately, I put this build together on the PTS today, and, well, there was pretty much nobody to fight, and you can't, like... I could have done duels on this build, but let's be honest, this is not a dueling build. We don't want to see like a 1v1 open field. Like, that's not what this build's for. This is a movement kite build. This is a burst build. This is for open world PvP, fighting a Zerg, almost even like fighting a Zerg by yourself on the Warden. So we are going to include some PvP footage from the live server that is appropriate for what this build will do. And I actually have a nice little snippet of an old spec I used to play on my Templar, my Stamina Templar, using Speedy Mist, and we'll just take a peek at Speedy Mist, and we'll talk a little bit about why Speedy Mist is so good. But as you can see from here, this build hits hard. I mean, this is just so much damage. I love the Warden for the burst, the Deep Fissure combo. We get the roll dodge for the damage. There you see the big smack from the Dawnbreaker, and we just take this guy out from 100 to 0. So much damage on this combo for the Warden, and so much survivability with the healing and the movement speeds as well. I can't wait to get the Speedy Mist on it, because it's just going to dominate. I mean, you're going to have so much movement on this build. You're going to be moving 30% faster than what you see the Mist here, 30% faster than what you see me running here. Yeah, it's going to be a good day to have Speedy Mist, I'll say that. So as you can see here, though, we are just rotating around these guys, using the tower, using our movement speed to just prevent them from really locking either me or my friend down. And we do have another EP player in here with us. So there is a group here, and they are fairly organized. They're working together as a unit. They're sticking close to each other, rezzing their dead. So this is going to be, well, a very difficult fight for us. Something important to note is that I'm using my movement to really just not stay in one spot. It's really important that you don't hold still in like a stagnant location. There you see that awesome burst just about bringing this guy down. But it's really important not to hold still in a stagnant location because it just allows your opponents to jump on top of you and really lock you down. And a lot of direction changing is going to be a part of that. And you see me using my mist form really just to prevent the incoming damage and the incoming stuns. I'm actually just being dodgy to the point that I'm preemptively rolling and avoiding these attacks so that even if they don't swing at me, they're going to miss me. So that's kind of the goal here, is to kind of put yourself in a state where just your opponent can't touch you. I go for a really risky heavy attack there with my Deep Fissure for a bit of burst, and there you see I do pay the price for it and take a lot of damage from these guys. A really good response with my healing ult into the dodge roll, and we managed to get around the corner with some healing into another mist. Now, another big advantage of mist form that I wanted to highlight here is also that it hides your icon. So you normally see these blue shields over my opponent players. Well, on their screen, I have a red shield, and when I go into mist form, that red shield goes away. So if I come around a corner in mist form and my opponent is not actually preemptively trying to attack me, or they don't know that I'm an enemy player, they actually could mistake me as a fellow friendly player player. So it's kind of like pseudo stealth almost. I almost want to say it's an interesting kind of idea behind it, but it works really well in these tight spaces in the tower, as you can see here. And finally, we actually hit these guys hard enough and do enough damage to them that they decide that they're just going to take their group and leave, and we claim the tower. Very nice. So, as I promised, guys, here is a clip of Speedy Mistform, and this is, of course, on my Templar, so this is a different build that honestly was the original build that inspired the one that you guys see here today. But this build, of course, is using the Speedy Mist, which we did have back in the day, and ZeniMax is so kind as to return it to us. Oh, and remember this, guys? Remember Clouding Swarm? Oh my gosh. Back when it was beautiful. Look at that. You can't do that anymore. But look at this. Look at the movement speed on the mist here. You can't actually launch yourself in the air off a mist like that as fast as you used to be. ZeniMax actually cuts your speed as you launch into the air, but there you see how I can just whip around just a single pull here and actually like outmaneuver these guys. Like, they're hesitant coming in because I'm able to use this pull as kind of a distraction mechanism with the movement speed, and it gives me almost the ability to claim land because there's terrain on it, because I can rotate around it and just mitigate so much damage. And there you see I get a really good stun. He's looking for me in the wrong spot. And he pays the price for it. But there, look at another just beautiful little spin on the mist there, and I position myself behind that post, preventing the Nightblade from being able to jump on me. And here's the same thing. We got that little bit of height from the cliff there. I try to position myself behind it so they can't gap close into me, and we managed to gap close across to them. And, well, it ended up not working too well, so we do have to pull out. But here we go again. We go into that mist form around the pole, and what we're going to do is stop and do the direction change here, and we go into the crit rush, the Dawnbreaker. Oh, baby. You know, and another thing that I want to mention, too, is that the movement speed in general is going to be 30% faster, and that's something that we also see in this old footage here, is that increased just general movement speed, and that's just due to the way that, well, things used to function in ESO. You could stack buffs a little bit better than you could today. And that just allowed you to have this crazy fast movement speed that nowadays we can have, but we do have to build for. But there you just see the strength of it. I mean, we just can engage, disengage, and really just play the Mist Knight game. Honestly, it's something that I have really missed in ESO. I have missed the mist. You've heard it here, guys. I have missed the mist. And, you know, ZeniMax came and they delivered. They brought this back. Speedy Mist used to be really OP. Used to be unable to target people when they were in mist form. And, you know, I think that mist form is finally in a place where they can give the speed back to it and it won't be crazy OP anymore. Because if you use it wrong, it'll just run you out of resources. You have to actively fight in and out of mist in order to use it effectively on a build. You can't just hide in mist form. Anyhow, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Just a quick shout out to our sponsor, What the Fast, a VPN for gamers. If you guys get shit ping to your favorite games and you maybe don't want to get bad ping to your favorite games, a VPN could help you out with that. It is free to try from the link in the description below. It's a local Canadian company. They have great reviews from GameStop, so I would say give it a shot if you guys want to try a VPN out. Finally, guys, thank you for tuning in, and I hope to see you next time. Speedy Mist. Oh, yeah. Good night, everybody.